Okay, so we've erased the highways from the inside of this shapefile, and I want to point out there's a distinct advantage to this. We have a clip file for erasing things outside of rasters. We don't really have a good erase tool for using rasters, but you have a great little tool set already for doing this type of thing. So I'm going to scroll back out. Let's say I'm interested in looking at Silverbow County, but I don't want to see all this other stuff around here, and I can't really limit my map size for whatever reason. I'm interested in just showing Silverbow County. You can do the cheat. I'm going to show you this cheat. Just draw a big old box around here, make it white. You can just keep drawing those boxes. So that when you go into data mode or data layout view, you zoom in here, what you've effectively done is white out the screen around here. So if you went all the way around, you could clip that out. But it works, but it's not really necessarily what we want. Maybe what we want is to view just Silverbow County in here. We want to keep that raster background, but we can't process this raster. This is a file that we've streamed from the internet. We pulled it down. It doesn't have any processing capabilities. Even if we did have the proper tool, we can't do that with this one. You're going to find a lot of streaming services are like that. You don't download this world imagery file because this thing is absolutely massive. It would eat your computer. So what we want to do instead is a little workaround, a little cheat with the buffer tool. I'm sorry, not the buffer tool, with the erase tool. So let's go into Art Catalog. We're going to effectively draw that box. In Analysis Tools, in that GeoDatabase, I'm going to create a new shapefile. Actually, we haven't talked about doing that, so I'm just going to do it here. A new shapefile. Going to make it a polygon, give it a coordinate system. And we'll call this blank, because that's what we're going to use it for. We're going to blank it out. So I've got this new blank polygon. All I have to do is draw that blank polygon, create a big old box around Silverbow County to effectively create that white box that I just showed you using the draw tool. We're going to start editing that one. I'm just going to draw a giant rectangle. All right, so I've got a big rectangle around Silverbow County. I'm going to stop editing and make that a shapefile. Now I have this big blank shapefile that's obscuring everything. That's what I want it to do. But if I want to see Silverbow County in here in the middle and get rid of everything else, all I've got to do is erase that new shapefile I just created. I'm going to erase it by Silverbow County. And if I make it white, it sure looks like all I've got in my map here is Silverbow County and the information displayed inside Silverbow County. Nice little cheat, a little workaround. I'm still going to get this text that's linked to the world imagery, but the idea here is to be creative with the tools that you have. There are always 10 different ways to do something in ArcGIS, and I know that's frustrating, but as you get better and better with this, you'll understand more and more how to use these tools. Right now, we have a fairly limited tool set, but we can develop those tools and use them in ways to get around problems we don't know how to solve. So this is just a fun little way to use erase to make sure you're hiding what you don't want to see from your raster. Nobody can tell the difference. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, buffer tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that and uncheck world imagery again. We're going to go back to the Montana streams and highways. The buffer tool is a tremendous tool. I love this one. I use it so often when I'm just trying to do something to understand the distance from a feature or something. This is a great tool. So we're going to look at the buffer tool. I'd like to buffer. So It's showing you essentially what it's going to do over here. If you've got your help menu open on your toolbox, you can click this button to show help. If you input a point, it's going to buffer around that point based on what size you tell it. We've got a couple of different dissolve types. We'll get into that, but it does the same thing with a line and the same thing with a polygon. Let's start with Silverbow County. We're going to put a buffer around Silverbow County. So I'm going to buffer that. I'm going to make a huge buffer because I'm essentially going to recreate what I just created with that shapefile. I'm going to put a 500-mile buffer around Silverbow County. So I've told it the linear unit is 500 miles. The side type I need to pay attention to here because I don't want to obscure everything inside Silverbow County. I only want to buffer around the outside. So I'm going to say outside only. Full will do both sides of the line. The method is either planar or geodesic. Planar, remember, is that flat surface. Geodesic assumes that the world is a globe. In this case, it's not going to matter much, but if you're looking at larger areas, you're probably going to want to stick with geodesic. The dissolve type we'll come back to. We don't really need to worry about that right now, but let's go ahead and run that tool. We're going to run that buffer. Put the world imagery back on so you can see the buffer when it comes up. Now I did an outside only buffer, so it's going to create a polygon that essentially buffers 500 miles around the outside of Silverbow County. It's basically going to give me the same view as this blank, only it's going to come in with a color that I have to change. You can see it's running over here. "500 miles might have been a little excessive. It's working hard." Okay, there it goes. The buffer popped up. It came in pale blue, but if I just make that buffer white, I've effectively put that background on it. Now I'm going to go back in and show you what that buffer looks like. We'll zoom out to it and see the whole thing. Huge buffer, that's why. Okay, so 500 miles was pretty excessive, but you can see it buffered 500 miles around Silverbow County. So I'm going to uncheck that. We'll go back into Silverbow and we'll look at the different types of buffers we can use. So this time, let's do a buffer on a line. We'll use Montana highways. We'll set a linear unit of 50 meters. We'll do the full side type. I'm going to show you what you've got here. Full will buffer it on both sides of the line. Left will only do the topographic left. Right will only do the topographic right. And this is only for polygons, the outside only. That's what we just ran. So you've got full left and right for the points, or for the lines, I'm sorry. You've got end types round and flat. We can run another one and look at those, but essentially round is going to give it a curved end and flat is going to try and follow the shape of the file to just truncate the end. Planar and geodesic. Now, dissolve type here is where we start getting into what we're going to create out of this buffer. Now, the Montana highways, I'm going to open the attribute table and look at them real quick. You'll see the routes. There's a lot of different routes, 1, 2, 90, 15, etc. If we want to create all of the buffer zones in number 15, in route number 15, we're going to dissolve by that. So I'm going to dissolve by the route. Set it to list instead of all or none, and I'm going to check route. All will dissolve everything in the attribute table. None will dissolve nothing in the attribute table, and list lets you choose what you want to dissolve by. So we're going to say okay and take a look at that. When that buffer pops up, we'll go into the attribute table and we'll see, instead of having all those different routes, they've now created one single route 1, whereas let's go to 90, runs through town. We can take a look at I-90 and see that that is one continuous buffer all the way through there. Now I didn't put a very big size on that, so you can't see that buffer real well. So I will make another buffer on Montana highways. We'll do left side only this time. we'll make it, let's do 20,000 feet. Oh, and I didn't even look at the end type. I'll come back to that. Let's do a flat end type on this one, and we'll do left only. We don't need to dissolve it this time unless you want to. You can set up a different dissolve, but again, none is the default. It's just going to leave everything the way it stands in the attribute table, or you can dissolve it by all, and it's going to dissolve everything into one single feature. So I'll just run it as an all. Okay. So what it's done here, if I put my highways back up, look at them, it's only done the topographic left of the highways. It didn't pick up the other side. So let's take a look at that end type now. I guess I'm going to have to go out because I dissolved the whole thing and look at the end of the road at the state boundary. But see, it has just truncated this completely and ended the highways right where that line is. The other buffer I created was a round end type. That one's not. I don't really see that one showing up. I don't know where I put it. Nope. Not sure what happened to that one, but the round end type, instead of that truncated flat line, you'll get a round shape here, just kind of a curved, rounded end. All right, so I'm going to I'll run a round end type on the streams. So Montana streams, going to set a linear unit of 10,000 feet. We'll do a full type this time, and we'll go round, planar. We're not going to dissolve anything on the streams, so we'll just run that, make that a real simple one. So you can see in this case, the streams end type is rounded. And it did the full so that it is, oh, I must have run it on the clipped streams, but it's going on either side of the stream here. Zoom back to Silverbow County. Actually, let me go back to the entire state. So now I've created all these different buffers in here. Let's talk about the merge tool. We've done mosaic using rasters. Merge is essentially the shapefile version of mosaic, or mosaic to a new raster. That's not an analysis tool, so we'll close down the analysis tools. You've got analysis extract is clip, analysis overlay is erase, and analysis proximity is buffer. So let's go back down into data management tools. Under general, we've got merge. I'm going to merge, in this case, I'm just going to merge all of my buffers. I'm going to grab all the buffers I just created, because why not? We just created them. Let's do something with them. I think that's it. Just for the sake of argument, the buffer files, as you can see, are all polygon shape files. I'm going to try and bring in a clip file. This one is a line file. It's giving me this red X. The input shape types are not equal. It will not let me merge a line file and a polygon file. I have to stick with one or the other, so I'm going to remove that clip file. Now I want you to notice all of these are from the attribute tables that I just brought in. So the highway buffers, this is all the information that was in the highway attribute table. But when I bring in a stream buffer, it's going to add a whole bunch more information in here. This is going to be blank in the new attribute table that I create, because this information doesn't exist outside of the streams. It's going to be blank in the highways, and this information is going to be blank in the streams. So when we create this, it's merging the attribute tables from the two different files, and it's creating all the different headings, but it doesn't necessarily have information to put in there. So we'll just say okay and run that. pretty simple. All this does is merge everything together. So let's take a look at that. This has merged all the files together, and you can see they're overlapping quite a bit. So this is where the next tool comes in. This one's also a data management tool. This is Dissolve. Now we can use Dissolve on all sorts of different files, but in this case, it's going to be really apparent exactly what Dissolve does. We just used a type of dissolve on the rivers. Essentially, we dissolved by the highway's route numbers. So if this is Route 90 and this is also Route 90, it's going to dissolve that into all Route 90. And this is all Route 2, and this is all Route 200. It dissolves out those lines that are the same name, and you choose the field that it's dissolving by. In this case, I just created that giant merge. Let's just dissolve by absolutely everything. I'm going to run that. All of these little lines are going to disappear in that dissolve because I didn't tell it anything specific to dissolve by, so it's just going to dissolve everything. So now all of those buffers have been merged together and then dissolved into one shape. So let's run that dissolve tool for not creating a buffer on the streams. Let's run that dissolve tool on by the name. Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the highways, not the streams. Okay, so we're going to dissolve that instead of by the name. We're going to dissolve it by route again, because I know there's multiple routes in there that all are the same. So let's run that. We're going to dissolve it by that field, the route number, and say, okay. You can also add a field here if you want. That's going to come in blank, but this is the same thing that we learned how to do 2 classes ago, where we actually added a field in the attribute table. You choose what type of field it is, and you can populate it when you're in edit mode. But in this case, we're not really interested in that. So let's run that. And when it comes up, this time, instead of running a dissolve buffer, we're not creating a buffer at all, but we are still creating a brand new file that is just the highways. So let's zoom to Highway 90. Highway 90 runs clear across the southwest portion of the state. And instead of being a whole bunch of different sections now, we've created one Highway 90 all the way through the state. If you are looking for a good way to label things, you only want one label. This question came up quite a bit when we were doing this labeling of the street signs and whatnot. You can dissolve your route types into all one single route, and then when you go to label them using that little icon for I-90 or Highway 200 or whatnot, you're going to get one label and one label only, because you only have one single arc running through here now. So hopefully some of these tools are starting to come together now. So let's see what's next. All right, I'm actually going to go ahead and start a new blank map, because the next thing I want to do isn't going to involve most of this. And I don't want to just delete all of those. So we'll get rid of that. I do want to bring back in streams and Silver County. So what I want to do this time, these are different mines: load mines, placer mines, and unknown type mines. I'd like to merge these 3 together, clip them to Silver County, and then determine how many mines there are within 1,000 feet of a stream inside Silver County. Okay, so this is not a terribly difficult question. All the tools we just used, we can process through to get to this answer. So the first thing we want to do is merge these different files. I want to merge load, placer, and unknown so that they're all one file. So we'll just call this mines. So now we've got all the mines in the state. Now, if I'm only interested in Silver County, I can clip this to Silver County. Clip my mines by Silver County. All right, so now I've processed this down to Silver County alone, all of the mines inside Silver County. Now my next step, I want to know how many of these mines are within 1,000 feet of a creek within Silver County. So I ran the clip on Silver County earlier. I don't know what I named that file. So instead of clipping it again, I'm just going to run a 1,000-foot buffer on or on the streams, because we already have this clip down to Silver County. So the next step will already remove anything outside of Silver County. So I want to run a buffer on Montana streams with a linear unit of 1,000 feet. Not terribly interested in any of this. All I want to know is what's within 1,000 feet, so I'm going to run that buffer. So now I have a buffer of 1,000 feet, and I have all of the mines in Silver County. Now all I want to do, I've created this new shapefile. I want to clip the mines to that buffer. Okay, so this is going to tell me how many mines are within 1,000 feet of Silver County. So if I open that attribute table up, how many are there? There are 5 mines within 1,000 feet of a stream inside Silver County. Okay, just a couple of real simple tools from the analysis toolbox got us that answer. And pretty quickly, honestly, that's a really simple analysis, but it's the kind of question you might be asked on a regular basis if you were doing any sort of mining work in Montana. Do we need to restore these creeks? Is there a mine in that area? This sort of thing. I'm sure there's a million other applications. This is just what I'm coming up with off the top of my head. So since I have a couple of items in my map, I'd like to show you a couple of things in the table of contents. Also, let's come back to this real quick. 5 mines within 1,000 feet of the creeks. Remember that, okay? That's your homework. So I'm going to come over here to the table of contents. I've noticed as I've come around to your computers, a lot of people don't list this by drawing order. So I'd like to talk about the table of contents here. I personally prefer to list by drawing order because I like to know what's on top, and I like to be able to move that around and basically set my map up the way I want, but that's not everyone's preference. The second list is listing by source. This is telling you where your files are pulling from. Are they pulling from your desktop? Are they pulling from the default GeoDatabase? Where are those files? You can't reorder these to show up in your map. It will not allow you to move these around to change the order in your map. But if you see this location, you know you're listing by order. You can list by visibility. This is a nice feature. I showed you how to set up the set selectable layers option, where you actually can turn on what is selectable and what's not. But in this case, we can actually set it up here. This is not selectable right now, or I'm sorry, visible. I'm in the wrong one. This is selectable. So this is not selectable. All of these are set to not selectable down here, but I can turn them on and off to set them as selectable or not. So if you're looking to change what you're selecting when you're going into the map and you're trying to choose something, you've set selectable items in here. It's telling you essentially what you've picked up, and these are not selectable when you drag that box. Okay, so let's go back over to this. This is visible or not. So when you're looking at it by layer view, if it's checked, it's visible. If it's unchecked, it's not visible, even though it is still actually in your map. So this is showing you whether it's visible or not. These are your options for how you display things. So you can set these if you want. I don't generally play with these. I'm perfectly fine with the default options. Let's go back over and look at this. I'm going to change the way the line shows up. I'm going to set it to a zigzag. When I hit apply, this Montana Streams is going to go to a zigzag. You can set up the size or the shape of these areas over here. So Silverbow County here, which is a polygon, is going to turn into a puddle. This is really nice if you're trying to show water features or something in your map and that square just doesn't look quite right. If you want to change that shape, that's really, really helpful. You can also change how far apart these are spaced. You can change the size of the items in there. So that blew up these little patches. I would avoid playing with this because it can get you into a bit of trouble, but I wanted to show you that. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you, we have talked about, or I told you to read about, GeoDatabases. I created this new analysis GeoDatabase over here when I was going in to run a file, but you can create a new GeoDatabase any way you'd like, the same way you create a new shapefile. Just right-click on the folder you want to put it in, go into New, and create a file geodatabase. Personal geodatabases still work right now, but Esri is getting away from personal geodatabases. They're really sticking with file geodatabases now. So let's use a new file geodatabase. You can change the name of that. And then you can populate that geodatabase as you go. One of the things that I'm terrible about, and I have not taught you guys to do very well with this, is data management. I tend to make these folders and just populate them. A geodatabase is a much better way to do that. I don't have anything in these right now, but you can set these up so that your files, whenever you run a tool, goes into your geodatabase. It's generally a good idea to keep items that are of similar lessons or that are related to one another in a geodatabase together. It's basically a folder for those files, but it's also a great tool for processing data. It holds your data a lot better, and it just works better when you're running an analysis. I don't know why this is, but I have had several tools, usually the more complex ones, not want to run and process out just as a straight shapefile or raster, but they will process under the same rules and go into a geodatabase. So for whatever reason, I'm going to start trying to use geodatabases more, but I'm of the old school where these were not, they didn't exist when I learned how to use GIS. So I'm afraid I'm a little behind on that, but we're going to start trying to use those more. But here is another really nice thing you can do with a geodatabase. Come up here to geoprocessing and go into environments. Now you don't necessarily have to do this with a geodatabase, but it's pretty nice. I'm going to set my current workspace. You'll notice anytime you try and run a tool or export something, it always wants to go to your default geodatabase. That's because your processing workspace is your default geodatabase. I'm going to change that and put that as my, nope, I don't know where I put my folder, as my new files geodatabase. I'm going to set my Scratch and my current workspace. We'll talk about Scratch versus current later on, but we're going to set up that as where it's supposed to go from now on, at least in this map. You need to set this up for every single map, but we're going to put that in there. Now, if I try and run the clip tool, I input something to clip. This time, instead of going to my default geodatabase, it's trying to put it in my geodatabase, the one I just created, and told it in the geoprocessing environments that I want it to go in. Anytime I run a tool from now on in this map, it's going to put it into the geodatabase I defined. Now, you don't necessarily have to use a geodatabase, but it's probably a good idea. As we go through the next few lessons, I'll try to remember to set this up and put everything in a geodatabase, because as these lessons are related to one another, the files should be kept together. The geodatabase is great for that. It keeps all the files together. So if I want to do something, instead of sending you a whole bunch of different files here, I can send you a geodatabase, and all of these files might be included in that geodatabase. So let's just go up to my default geodatabase. This one I know has been running. Everything I did today dropped into my default GeoDatabase. You can see all these files are in there. I have been working on a project for, oh, I probably shouldn't open that. I've been working on a project for a coworker, and I have multiple geodatabases set up for him based on what year I'm doing the data analysis in. He has the option to go into that geodatabase, share that data, and look at it and see everything all lined up specific to that year instead of just being packed in and clogged in into a folder. So really nice tool for sharing data and for keeping your data processed in a better system than what they call the spaghetti model, where you just leave everything kind of loose and hanging out in different folders. So I am going to end this there. That is as far as I have this lesson today. I know this was a lot. Hopefully you guys can pause and go back through this at your own leisure. Please let me know if you have any trouble. But remember, 5. All right.